In our World Lead today, the House passed a Republican-led resolution condemning anti-Semitism, while two House Democrats plan to introduce a resolution this week condemning Hamas's use of sexual violence and rape against Israeli women and girls. Sexual violence and rape, typically an easy thing to condemn, one would think, full stop, but the resolution has been drafted in the wake of these comments on CNN from Progressive Caucus Chair Pramila Jayapal.
Rape is horrific. Sexual assault is horrific. I think that it happens in war situations. Terrorist organizations like Hamas obviously are using these as tools. However, I think we have to be balanced about bringing in the outrages against Palestinians.
The Congresswoman today released a statement defending these remarks, saying, quote, "I understand that I have critics who disagree with me on policy, but for them to insinuate that I would think, say, or act in any way that equivocates on rape is outrageous and completely inconsistent with my record and life's work," unquote. Democratic Congressman Jared Moskowitz of Florida is here to discuss. He and a couple of Republicans are backing a commission to study acts of anti-Semitism in the United States. Congressman, what was your response when you watched that interview with Congresswoman Jayapal, and what was your reaction to her statement today?
Well, thanks, Jake. Well, look, I'm happy she put out that statement. I'm glad she clarified it because, by the way, when you watched the interview, I mean, it wasn't confusing just to viewers. I mean, boy, Dana Bash was even bewildered by the response. It was almost like the Congresswoman was concerned that she was criticizing Hamas too much and wanted to make sure that she gave Israel equal time for her criticism because she kept trying to change the subject back to Israel. Like, oh, well, October 7th happened a long time ago. Let's just talk about yesterday. And so, look, it can't just be that when it happens to women, except for Jews, we have a different rule. This is not something that has been disputed, by the way, at all. But, look, the UN has shown that it was difficult to condemn this act. I mean, the UN could barely condemn Hamas. And so this is something that we're seeing out there, and it borderlines blatant double standard for Israel and borderlines anti-Semitism.
Do you think the Democratic Party has an anti-Semitism problem?
Well, of course, anti-Semitism is a bipartisan issue. Okay, let's not pretend like it's just my friends who like to have dinner, with Holocaust deniers at Mar-a-Lago. This is a bipartisan issue, and the problem is Democrats only want to call out, Marjorie Taylor Greene and Paul Gosar and Trump when they do it, and they don't want to call it out when it's in their own party. But it's easy to do it when it's across the aisle. It's much harder to do it when it's coming from within your own house. And I just think that it wasn't acceptable before October 7th. But if October 7th isn't a wake-up call for the Jewish community and for other people who care about hatred and bigotry, not just in this country, around the world, we have to call it out, even when it's coming from our friends. It's uncomfortable, especially people you have to work with or that live in your own home or that, hey, you serve in Congress with and that you serve on committees with. You might sit next to them. We have to point out to them that it's unacceptable. This would never be happening with another minority group. This would never be happening if this was about, racism. We would never be seeing this. But when it comes to Jews and anti-Semitism, there seems to be just a completely different standard.
So you mentioned Paul Gosar and Marjorie Taylor Greene, both of whom attended this white supremacist convention hosted by Nick Fuentes, who also dined with Donald Trump. Nick Fuentes is a notorious Holocaust denier who is racist, who's anti-Semitic, and he has been talking to people in the Texas Republican Party, which resulted in the Texas state GOP's executive committee, somebody trying to propose a ban on associated with Nazi sympathizers and Holocaust deniers, and that was rejected, that ban. A prominent conservative activist caught meeting with Nick Fuentes, but Texas Republicans thought a ban on fraternizing with Nazis might be a slippery slope or too vague. And I have to say, I haven't gone around to every Texas Republican or every Republican in Congress to ask them what they think, but it doesn't seem too heavy a lift to say that you shouldn't be fraternizing with Holocaust deniers and fraternizing with Nazis.
Yeah, this is the first time I've heard someone say that we don't want to do something with Nazis because that might be a slippery slope. A slippery slope to where? We're talking about Nazis. I mean, that used to be something that automatically people would say that this is unacceptable. But no, I mean, look, Nick Fuentes went to Mar-a-Lago and had tea and dinner with the former president. So did Kanye West. The right in this country has a problem when it comes to these neo-Nazis. We've seen the rallies and the marches in Florida and other places, and we see people in the Republican Party just be silent. And they're silent because, unfortunately, those are their voters. And the same thing's happening on the Democratic Party. When we see ceasefire rallies and marches, which is a foreign policy issue, but we see people in that crowd holding signs that say, kill the Jews and cleanse the Jews, we don't see a lot of people on the left calling that out. They're just quiet about it, like, the signs didn't happen. Or when we see posters of hostages being ripped off of light poles around this country as if Jews don't exist, that they need to be erased. Again, we see people on the left just ignoring that and being quiet. And we have to call it out. This can't be normalized. And so this is a bipartisan issue. You know, we're losing bipartisanship in this country. It's unfortunate that the one place that we see it is when it comes to being an anti-Semite.
But do you think that when your two Democratic colleagues, introduce a resolution condemning Hamas's use of sexual violence and rape against Israeli women, do you think that Democrats there are going to be some Democrats that vote against it?
No, I think they'll all vote for it, because I think actually they saw what happened, and I obviously think the Congresswoman's clarification on that is extremely helpful. But this is part of a pattern, right? This is not just happening all of a sudden. We've seen a pattern of this, that there is a double standard. Even how Israel's being criticized in this war. Look, Israel's not perfect, but I mean, Israel has to live up to the highest of the high standards that the United States could not meet, or any other country could not meet. And so, you know, that's just something that we deal with in a reality as being a Jew in this country every single solitary day around the world, and even in Congress, is that there is just a different standard. We saw just a couple years ago, we tried to pass an anti-Semitism resolution when Democrats had control of Congress, and we couldn't get that done unless we put every other group in there simultaneously. And so there's always a watering down that, oh, it's not as bad, or don't worry, it's just the Jews. And this is something that the Jewish community is starting to rally around and starting to amplify, because October 7th showed the Jewish community that, yeah, the Holocaust was a long time ago, but there are people who still carry those same sentiments today around the world and in this country, Jake.
You think every House Democrat's going to vote for that resolution against Hamas using rape and sexual violence? Every single one?
I would hope so. I mean, if they vote present, then obviously they're going to have to answer to the women of America.
I might be willing to do a wager with you offline. Democratic Congressman Jared Moskowitz, thanks so much.